no Bruno Fernandes, there aren't a lot of goals in that team, Crook, is there?
This is going to be a glimpse into what life is like without Fernandes. They aren't the same team. They don't create as many opportunities. Obviously, his numbers in terms of goals and assists are there to be shot at. So I think he is going to be a real loss.
Sesko just doesn't look like he's up to full speed yet.
Yeah, and that's what worries me. He doesn't look like someone who is suited to Premier League football at the moment. It's early days. He's only young. But is he an upgrade on Rasmus Højlund? I'm not seeing it at this moment in time.
Cole Palmer against Morgan Rogers is certainly one of them. Which one would you take in your team right now, Scott?
You know what I think about Cole Palmer? But right now, Morgan Rogers. And the way Morgan Rogers is playing right now, you'd take Morgan Rogers unless you're an absolute ardent Chelsea fan, which I love Chelsea, but I can still just about put my head above my heart.
But all the pressure on Enzo Maresca stems from that post-Everton rant that he had, and that he's had a couple of opportunities to backtrack on and hasn't. So I think every game he plays now is potentially hazardous. He needs wins.
Hello to you both. If I had some mistletoe, I would try and give you a big smacker. It's a shame that we're remote rather than all in the same room, because otherwise I'd be puckering up, boys. What does Christmas Eve look like in the Crook and Minto household?
It looks pretty hectic. And by the way, I wouldn't want a kiss from you with all that lurgy that you've been carrying. But yeah,
I have been very ill.
It looks pretty hectic. Lots of last minute wrapping. Obviously, preparation for the dinner tomorrow. The beer keg has come all the way from Gloucestershire this year, has just arrived. The port is in the cupboard. The champagne's in the fridge. We're ready to rock and roll.
It just sounds like a normal day at Crook's house, though, doesn't it? Really, to be honest.
He's not invited anyone, is he? That's just for him.
Oh dear. Scott, are you looking forward to the big day?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having a Colombian wife. We celebrate Christmas Eve. So, of course, Christmas Eve, I'll be spending time with you, I think, if you're still going to be okay. Good few hours. Fingers crossed. So we can pucker up then. But and then in the afternoon, I'm coming straight back to, I'm doing roast potatoes. That's
Are you?
How to do, yeah. So she cooks.
Crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. The only way.
That sounds like a bit like Crook himself, doesn't it? Crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle. Yeah.
And salty as well, of course. So it's even salty, more like Crooky.
I did this thing where I rang my mum up and I said, Mum, I usually host Christmas Day, right? Okay, because just for various different reasons, it's easier for me to do that usually. But I have been doing so much this year that I just couldn't do it, right? So I rang my mum up. I said, hey, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to go out for dinner this year. Do you want to join us? And she was like, oh, it was like blasphemy. She was like, oh, no. I don't think I can do that. I think it would be much better if, do you know what? I think maybe I will cook the Christmas dinner. Why don't you all come to me? And I went, what a great idea. Love that. I'll be around about work. Sounds fantastic. I'll see you then. Right, there's only one game on Boxing Day. And does that annoy you a little bit? Because usually the Premier League takes centre stage on Boxing Day, Crook.
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I think Boxing Day is about not just football, but about live sport. You've got the King George at Kempton, which for racing fans who are listening is going to be brilliant this year, but only one Premier League game. I think it's a shame. On one hand, it puts a bit more focus on the EFL, but they get big turnouts on Boxing Day anyway. And I think I'm right in saying this is the fewest number of fixtures in the professional game since the end of the Second World War. And I think it's a really bad look on the Premier League. I know that they'll say it's because of contractual obligations. We have to play the bulk of the games on Saturday and Sunday, but that just tells you where the game is at the moment. It's more about money than it is about tradition and about the fans themselves.
That does sound a lot of nonsense, Scott, doesn't it?
Yeah. Let me tell you, there were two games in the season, for me anyway, but I think I speak on behalf of a lot, if not all, the players, where the goosebumps are really there. And that's the first game of the season and Boxing Day. First game of the season, you don't quite know how it's going to go. Pre-season's gone good or bad. The whole season ahead of you. Boxing Day, there's something special about training Christmas Eve, training quickly Christmas Day, but you know how much it means to the fans. And that Boxing Day feel, just as the referee's about to blow his whistle and the fans go mad, no matter how cold you are, I'm telling you now, as I say, you get the goosebumps and the hairs on the back of your neck right out.
Just tell us what it's like to be a footballer on Christmas Day then. If you're playing Boxing Day, let's just say you're kicking off 3 o'clock Boxing Day. What do you actually do? I mean, you're all right. You've got a Colombian wife, Colombian family. So you have Christmas Eve as your big day anyway. So I suppose for you, it's all right. But what about normal footballers that celebrate Christmas Day?
Well, I only met her when I was 27, so I still had the English tradition as well before then.
Take us back then 50 years and tell us what that was like.
a little bit more than that. No, I mean, I did an interview recently about it actually, and I've been conditioned to Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. You know, you don't have off. You're in training or you're playing. You get used to it. You know, it's brilliant. There's no one on the road, so you can get to training very, very quickly. You have a short, sharp training session with a little bit of set plays. Depending on where you are, you might stay in a hotel Christmas Day night, or you just have the early training session. And sometimes we're given the option as to whether we want to train early and then we go home and then we open the presents, because a lot of the players, I wasn't one of them, had kids, or you train a little bit later in the afternoon. So you've done all the presents that way. But in terms of eating, I'd still have the turkey and roast potatoes. Just make sure I have a lot of veg there as well. It wouldn't be chicken and pasta on Christmas Day. And you're looking forward to it, but you can't touch the alcohol where everyone else is getting drunk around you.
Really? I thought most people just had it dry. I mean, from what I hear from Crook, it's just a very sort of sober holiday in his household.
You just keep topping up.
Just keep topping up. Yeah, Boxing Day does have one Premier League game. I must admit, I would be furious if I wasn't working Boxing Day. A bit like you, Scott. We are conditioned to work all over Christmas. It is part of what we do. Even as a presenter, I would always, years ago when I was doing radio shows down in the South Coast, I would always do Christmas Day morning. I'd do the breakfast show on Christmas Day morning because it's fun. I like it. It's a big event. You feel like you're getting people ready for their big day. You're part of other people's Christmas in a sense. And because you've always done it, you'll feel a bit naked when you're not doing it, to be honest. And the idea of not working Boxing Day would be absolutely, I'd be crazy. I can't remember the last time I didn't work on a Boxing Day. Actually, I do. After the World Cup in 2022, we went away. And there was a bit of a delayed restart for the football, wasn't there? I think they did come back Boxing Day, but I wasn't back by Boxing Day. So I think that's the only time ever that I can remember not working on Boxing Day. But there's something about Boxing Day, sport on the radio, little buffet of cold meats and leftover food from the day before. You know, everybody just sort of a little bit more chilled out than they were the day before. I think it's just great. I just love Boxing Day. I think it's perfect. And Manchester United against Newcastle is the perfect fixture because they are two of the league's most entertaining sides. Well, Manchester United lost their last game, but they go into the game against Newcastle United with confidence, I think, having been buoyed by the performance, Crook.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they lost much in defeat at Villa Park, but what they did lose was Bruno Fernandes, who's going to be a massive loss. And actually, this will settle the debate because he's a player who divides opinion, even amongst some Manchester United fans. But I think this is going to be a glimpse into what life is like without Fernandes. They aren't the same team. They don't create as many opportunities. Obviously, his numbers in terms of goals and assists are there to be shot at. So I think he is going to be a real loss. Lisandro Martinez came in against Aston Villa and joined Ugarte in midfield, did well, but doesn't bring the same dynamism that Fernandes does. And they've got 8 players out now, Manchester United, for this game. No Kobbie Mainoo either, plus Ahmad and Bumo away on AFCON duty. Casemiro will be back, which will be a bonus, but they're stretched. So as much as the performance was positive against Aston Villa, I worry about this game because of the absentees. I'd rather they were playing Wolves first than Newcastle, and obviously Wolves is the next game.
Yeah. What did you make of the use of his bench on Sunday, Scott, bringing on Fletcher and Lacey just a few days after being openly critical of other academy players?
Oh, I think he wasn't throwing the blanket over every single academy player. I think he was doing that on certain individuals. Maybe there's a culture there at Manchester United where suddenly you come through the academy and you think you're an absolute star. And I definitely think there's a thing where the academy has to sort out. You know, it wouldn't have happened under Sir Alex Ferguson. It doesn't happen at Liverpool. And yet at United, there's been no real success. I know Crookie can chuck in major trophies, but you know what I mean about chasing Premier League titles and Champions League as well since Fergie's gone. the culture, I think, is not where it should be. And I think we live in a world now where, for a long time, apprenticing, talking about conditioned. I was 15, 16 years of age going in at Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, cleaning boots, and that's fine. And I think anyone you speak to,
Absolutely.
even 10 years younger than me, would be saying the same thing. It helped make them. And to take that away, and now you've got to be careful how you speak to them. Of course, you've got to be careful how you speak to people, but you've also got to be tough. This is elite at the very top end professional football, and they've got to be able to handle that. And I go back to what I said in the previous pod. I think Ramarine's absolutely right. There should be an attitude of, okay, you think like that, I'm going to make you change your mind. Where I do think he was wrong in he's saying, I'm not always right. Maybe I'm wrong here. You're not wrong here. At this moment in time, you're not wrong. So you make sure that you change my mind so that you're very much a positive. Because at this moment in time, I'm absolutely right.
One of the problems that Manchester United have had is, I'm going to say goal scoring, but they scored 4 goals against Bournemouth in the last home game. But they did have a lot of chances in that game against Aston Villa at the weekend, but didn't quite finish them off. Cunha scored 1, but could have had another. Sesko just doesn't look like he's up to full speed yet. So without Brian Mbeumo in the team, Mason Mount is very useful, but doesn't score a lot of goals. There aren't a lot, and no Bruno Fernandes, there aren't a lot of goals in that team, Crook, is there? And that's going to be a bit of a difficulty against a Newcastle team who do know where the net is.
Yeah, and that's what worries me. And actually, I'll go back to this fixture last season. It was almost a year to the day, and that was a low point for Manchester United. They got absolutely slaughtered at home by Newcastle. Joshua Zirkzee was booed off by his own fans. And I don't think he's the answer to any kind of goal-scoring issue. There's a lot of interest from Roma for him in the window. I think United are reluctant just in terms of numbers, but I personally think actually that move might be best for all concerned. Back to Italy where he played his best football, but United are going to need to sign a replacement for that to happen. And you're right about Šeško. He's had 2 huge chances in the first half. All right, good save from Martinez with a one-on-one, but I think a striker in the peak of confidence and form takes that away. The second one, the touch was just appalling. And even in the second half, Mason Mount whips a brilliant ball across the 6-yard line. He's just too slow to react, Benjamin Šeško. And he doesn't look like someone who is suited to Premier League football at the moment. It's early days. He's only young. But is he an upgrade on Rasmus Højlund? I'm not seeing it at this moment in time.
Well, interestingly, you mentioned Mason Mount there, and I said he doesn't offer too much in terms of scoring goals, but boy, does he create a lot of chances, and he is terrific. He's been playing very, very well for Manchester United. I think he looks like a man reborn. And I always thought he would come good for Manchester United. I know I've been talking about him for years and years and years. I have a little nickname for him, Baby Jesus. And Crook always thinks that I'm a little bit over the top in terms of...
Topical for this time of year.
Over-egging his abilities. But I do think he's a terrific, terrific player. When he's fully fit, he makes a massive difference. And you can see that, I think, now. I suppose at the flip side of the coin, in terms of Šeško and Gyökeres, who we'll talk about a little bit later, I'm sure, Voltemade and Visser, both of them scoring goals for Newcastle United. It bought in at great expense. Obviously, they had to wait for Visser, but he scored within 9 minutes of his first start, Scott, and he might get the nod here.
He might. I still don't think he's not 100% fit. So maybe Eddie will look at that and say, okay, he might be good for Voltemade. Let's not forget Voltemade scored that own goal against Sunderland and then scored 2 goals against Chelsea. So he's back in form again, and I'm really pleased for him. So I personally would perhaps start with him and then use Visser to come off the bench and his pace to go in behind when perhaps United are a little bit tired. Because again, 1, I think it's a fitness thing, but 2, I think the tactics would go nicely. But this is a good time for Newcastle to be playing United for the reasons that Crookie gave. Let's not forget though, Newcastle are terrible away from home.
Yeah,
only one win in the Premier League all season. So maybe if you're going to be playing Newcastle, now's the time to be playing them as well. So this could lend itself to a lot of poor defending, a lot of goals, and a really exciting game.
Yeah, they're so inconsistent, Newcastle, at the moment, especially away from home. And even when they have put in good performances, there's been moments in games where they've then wobbled. I mean, go back to the match that I was at recently in Leverkusen, where they got themselves into a winning position and ended up not winning the game because they switched off very, very late in it. They lose control of matches very quickly. They're sometimes a little bit over chaotic, I think. Why can't they put together a 90-minute performance, Crook?
Well, like United, the squad is stretched. I actually would have fancied them to beat Chelsea at the weekend without all the absentees, and and then when I saw who was playing and more importantly who wasn't, I thought, well, actually, maybe this might end in a draw because at home, whatever team they put out, they're still difficult to play against. And we keep trotting out the stat. We do it every time we speak about Newcastle, Barcelona, Arsenal, Liverpool, the only teams to win at St James's Park. I don't think you can underestimate the role the crowd play in that, and the intensity that they create rubs off on the players. Away from home, obviously, they don't have that, and I think they feel their absentees a little bit more. And I just don't think defensively they're strong enough at this moment in time, and that's partly because of who they haven't got in, but it wouldn't surprise me if they've got funds to spend in January if they look at a centre-back. What about someone like Nathan Ake, who Eddie Howe knows very well from Bournemouth, doesn't seem to have much of a future at Manchester City. I've actually written about the prospect of him going back to the Vitality Stadium in the upcoming window, but it wouldn't surprise me if Eddie Howe is keeping tabs on him as well.
Well, interesting, isn't it? Because they probably got enough money. I mean, they're owned by a sovereign wealth fund, and they've also got a little bit of that Isaac money still swilling around. But the issue they've got again is PSR. Are they compliant? Are they going to be able to spend during the January transfer window? They definitely need some sort of backup defensively because Sven Botman, for as good as he is, he just can't stay fit. And if you haven't got the ability to be available on a regular basis, then they've got to look at somebody else. That's why they brought in Malik Chow. Cher's getting towards the end of his career. Burns a cracking player, and he's all heart, all power. If Newcastle want to be playing Champions League football regularly, they're going to need to upgrade that area eventually, I think. It seems like a big window, I think, for Newcastle United. This one and the next one, Scott.
Yeah, and January's always difficult. It's always difficult. You have to play over the odds. I mean, I assume with the money they brought in for Isak, that I know they spent money, but they should be reasonably okay in terms of PSR. And that's the problem, not the fact that they haven't got the money. But it's just a tough window. It's a really tough window. I think you've hit the nail on the head there as to why they need a good centre half. And again, I go back to whenever I talk about Chelsea, that kind of experienced centre half. When you're away from home, you can calm everyone down. You can bring them all in and say, we're going to make ourselves compact and organised. That's what they need at the moment because, Crook is spot on at home. Almost whoever they put out, they're a difficult side to play against. Away from home, there is that mentality issue.
On to Saturday's action now, and it is a big day in the top flight. Chelsea versus Aston Villa. What a game this is. This is absolutely defining this game, Scott, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the Premier League table, Chelsea find themselves in a situation where they almost have to win this game if they want to be major contenders. Not necessarily for top honours, but certainly if they want to be in and around those Champions League places. Otherwise, your top three are just starting to move away from you, aren't they? I mean, Aston Villa, 36 points so far. Chelsea on 29. If Aston Villa were to win this, the gap between third and fourth, or the two teams that are in third and fourth at this moment in time, would be 10 points. Chelsea simply have to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can come on to Villa. If Villa win this, then again, it's another week down the line where we can, people can turn around and say, well, are they in the title challenge? But actually, I still believe if Aston Villa finish top four, that's a wonderful season for them. As I said before, they've got the Europa League, and I think they will go all the way in that one. If the gap then becomes, 10 points between Chelsea and Aston Villa, then Chelsea are just fighting for that fourth spot. Maybe fifth as well in the Champions League, but we'll have to wait and see. And, Liverpool can pick up points. I don't think there's too many teams behind them, though, that are really there that you think are capable of doing it. But if Chelsea want to be not necessarily title challengers, but be as close to the top two as possible, this is an absolutely massive game. And I see this I'm not missing this game for the world. I think it's going to be a great watch.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely sensational. And it's a massive week for Aston Villa because after this game away at Chelsea, they go away to Arsenal as well, which is live on talkSPORT on Tuesday night. So it is a huge moment in their season, Crook. If they were to win those two games, the sort of talk that maybe they're on the margins of the conversation when it comes to the title would, I think, be moved to one side. They'd be very much in the thick of the action.
Yeah, particularly the Arsenal game. I mean, it suits Unai Emery to say that actually Chelsea should be favourites for this game. They were the team who were meant to be challenging for the top four. We were supposed to be looking at 7th or 8th or maybe 6th at best. But Villa are above Chelsea in the table, and they're above them for a reason. So I don't necessarily buy into that narrative. But I was just looking up Chelsea's record against Villa at Stamford Bridge, and you'll know this. It's not been a happy hunting ground for Villa. Since 2002, they've won 3 times on Chelsea soil. But they have just banished a hoodoo at home to Manchester United. So why can't they do it in West London as well?
Yeah, and it's got loads of different subplots, this game, but Cole Palmer against Morgan Rogers is certainly one of them. Which one would you take in your team right now, Scott?
You know what I think about Cole Palmer, but right now, Morgan Rogers. I think he's in brilliant form. I think it's a big game for Cole Palmer. I think if he's 100% fit and firing, if everyone's playing to their maximum, Thomas Tuchel has to start him, let alone bring him in the squad. But he's a million miles from that at the moment because he's been so injured, because Morgan Rogers is doing so well and Jude Bellingham is doing well at Real Madrid as well. I was there with Crookie at the Everton game and he was quiet, Crookie, wasn't he? He obviously scored the goal and that's what he's capable of. It was a goal of a really good moment and it was a really good finish. But he's not 100% fit yet. And the way Morgan Rogers is playing right now, you'd take Morgan Rogers unless you're an absolute ardent Chelsea fan, which I love Chelsea, but I can still just about put my head above my heart.
Just about. Enzo Maresca, it's a big week for him, I think.
Because he's made it one for himself. I mean, all the pressure on Enzo Maresca stems from that post-Everton rant that he had and that he's had a couple of opportunities to backtrack on and hasn't. So I think every game he plays now is potentially hazardous. When they were 2-0 down against Newcastle, I thought, well, if this turns ugly, are the ball going to react to it? I'm not saying that. Listen, his head, I don't think, is on the chopping block, but he needs wins because if you're going to come out and make that kind of statement and effectively go to war with your owners, then you've got to deliver on the pitch. And they haven't really done that, have they? They weren't great against Cardiff in the game immediately afterwards. And we've already mentioned on the previous podcast, they were really poor in the first half against Newcastle. So which Chelsea is going to turn up? The one that stunk the place out for 45 minutes on the North East or the one that were really good in the second half? You never can tell.
Well, if you go back over their last 7 games, they've only won 2 of them, Scott.
Yeah, and if you go over the next 3 games, there's Villa at home, Bournemouth at home, City away. So if we're saying that Villa are title challengers, we know that City are title challengers. It's a big few games for Chelsea coming up.
Yeah.
Look, I think Maresca's, he said what he said. I think if he had his time again, he probably wouldn't say it. I think he threw his toys out the pram a little bit. You know, I wouldn't call myself a Maresca fan, but I'm definitely a Maresca defender because I think he's done really well. I don't want Chelsea to go down the route of just sacking managers on a regular basis when they're not being given the tools. And clearly that's exactly what he wants. So I actually think whatever we talk about it's a big few games and what he said, as long as he sorted it with the people above him, I don't see results being an issue either way.
What was really interesting is, I don't know, the suggestion is now that what happened in that 24 hours is that after the Atalanta game, he was questioned by the sporting directors and asked whether or not his substitutions lost him the game. And I think he lost his head over that a little bit. I think that's where the sort of the initial sort of fractures started to come from. Can you understand the manager getting a little bit irate about that, Scott?
Absolutely. I'm just looking to the game now. And so he put Wes Fofana on for Trevor Chalobah, and then obviously Tosun came on for him. Malagusto came on in midfield. I think that's the main one, isn't it? Alejandro Garnacho coming on for Pedro. I think it's having both Reece James and...
But it's the reaction to Scamacca's goal, isn't it? So Scamacca equalises after Chelsea go ahead through João Pedro. In the 55th minute, Scamacca equalises, right? He makes the changes. He brings on Neto. It takes off Neto, who's probably one of their best attackers. He takes off Enzo Fernandez, who we know is very good at generating goal-scoring opportunities and goals. He brings in Malagusto and Alejandro Garnacho, who hasn't been very good at scoring and creating goals for Chelsea in the not-too-distant past. And then Charles de Catalara scores the winner with 7 minutes to go. That's the conversation. That's the suggestion is that he was questioned about those changes. But I mean, if you work in the system at Chelsea, right, the sporting directors are going to question you because their heads are on the chopping block.
Right. So, I mean, I watched the game. I can't remember exactly how Enzo Fernandez and Pedro Neto play, but if they weren't playing well, then I can understand it. But you're absolutely right, and there's something at Enzo Maresca I can't defend him on. you're going to be questioned. And if that's the case, come out with the answers and whether it was a bad result or not. And I can turn around and say, you look at 2-1, why is Cucurella, who I love, dropping off so much to the point where he's almost got inside the box, deflection, and Robert Sanchez, who I think should save it, will say that it was a deflection and it all came too quick. So it's poor individual decision-making from the players, but he has to understand that was a big game. That was one they couldn't afford to lose. And now they're going to struggle now to, Paphos and Napoli away. They need to win both of those matches. And that's not going to be easy. So he's got to understand that was going to come. You have to just be able to be very level-headed and answer that in a way. And these are my reasons. And this is what I thought at the particular time.
Crookmeister?
I'd love Scott's view on this because it's never sat right with me. Obviously, we're in the tunnel at Stamford Bridge after the game. We're doing our interviews. We're waiting right at the mouth of the tunnel for the players and the managers to come and speak to us in the media and in the radio. And every game, you see an entourage of hierarchy go past you. It includes Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, the sporting directors. It includes Egbali, if he's there, which he wasn't, I don't think, actually, against Everton when all this kicked off. But they go into the changing room, win, lose or draw after every game.
Yep.
Now, I'm not sure Mauricio Pochettino was ever completely comfortable with that. I'm not sure any manager should be comfortable with that. You've been a player in the dressing room, Scott. That should be the inner sanctum, shouldn't it, for coaching staff and for the players themselves?
Listen, I was about to say it's their club. It's not. And that's what all owners have to realise is the club of the fans. But they own the club from a legal point of view, financial point of view, in a way they can do what they want. I can tell you from a player's point of view, they don't want them in there. They will say, hello, how you doing? You're the gaffer. You pay my wages. If I can get on your good side, maybe you'll, give me an extra contract or something. But that's not really going to happen. So players don't really want them there. They'll smile, they'll talk, but every single game, win or lose, I appreciate the fact that at least they're not coming in just when they win, or conversely when they lose to have a go. But you don't need to be there. It's almost like, this is my little toy. Come in. I want to see the players straight after.
But also there is a suggestion that it undermines the authority of the manager and that he cannot then hold court, cannot do what he needs to do because he's got his bosses on his shoulder and everybody knows that he's got a boss. Do you know what I mean? He's not the alpha in the room, which is a bit of an issue. I imagine, Scott, by the way, you were very good at brown nosing. I mean, charming the hierarchy to get new contracts.
I never had it. And I wouldn't have, the very odd time they did come in, I stayed away. Not me, not my cup of tea. Just get your head down and try and do the best you can on the pitch. That's what I was like. But it depends when they come in, Sam. If they come in immediately as the players are going in, then absolutely the manager needs to be able to say what he wants to say without them hearing. Yeah. If he's given them a sort of half an hour and they just had the shower and they're coming back in, that's absolutely fine.
So Chelsea could do Arsenal a big favour, actually, and Manchester City by taking points off Villa this weekend. Arsenal have got Brighton at home. City, you would imagine, will navigate their fixture as well. What do you think about Brighton's trip to Arsenal? Because Brighton have been pretty inconsistent, actually, haven't they? They're still within touching distance of the European places, but I'm not sure they should be.
Yeah, people who are defending Fabian Herzler will point out that actually he's got a better points per game ratio than his predecessor, Roberto De Zerbi, did. But I don't think the football is as good. I don't really know where Brighton are at this moment in time. They're 9th in the table. They've pretty much won, lost and drawn the same number of their 17 matches, 6 wins, 6 draws, I think it is, and 5 defeats. So they tend to win 1 in every 3. Going into the last game week, they had picked up fewer points than at any stage of their 4 previous Premier League campaigns. I'm not seeing progress. And I think the big issue for me is at the top end of the pitch. But they had chances against Sunderland in their 0-0 draw. But I don't know where the goals are coming from, particularly when Danny Welbeck isn't available as he was. And with the greatest will in the world, even when he is fit, he's only hit double figures and he once in his Premier League career. Yeah. Danny Welbeck. They've not replaced João Pedro. I thought the young Greek boy Kostoulas actually came on and did really well, but we've not seen much of him this season. Lewis Dunk is starting to pick up little niggly injuries. They missed Van Hecker at the weekend as well. Do I see Brighton as a team who are going to finish in the European place? I don't think so. And I think that would have been the aim at the start of the season.
Yeah, I'm not sure they can trouble Arsenal, actually, at home. I mean, you would have thought that Arsenal should be able to negotiate that. I did sort of rather pithily say that Manchester City should navigate their game as well, but they're away to Nottingham Forest live on talkSPORT at 12:30 on Saturday. And actually, that's not an easy fixture. Yes, they're purring at the moment. Yes, they're hitting form at a crucial time, Scott. But actually, what percentage chance do you give them of winning this game away at Nottingham Forest, who have started to pick up results, especially at the City Ground?
Yeah, you were very pithy there, weren't you?
I was.
Good word.
I was. I felt like Scott Minto in a pair of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer's gold Speedos, which he got for Christmas. Being very flouncing, just completely dismissing Nottingham Forest out of order.
I'm still hoping.
Slap on the wrist for me.
No, look, Forest are one of those sides where they've got good individual players. They have a manager who knows how to make teams difficult to play against. Look, I could say what I want to say. The individuals, Elliot Anderson, I think, is an amazing talent. I think the fact that it looks like he's going to start for England in the World Cup shows just a wonderful season or two that he's absolutely had, and it's not been easy this particular season. They have players, of course, they have that can hurt Manchester City, but City, I think, are another level and some above this Forest side. The only chance the Forest have got would have been at the City Ground, in the way that, you know, a Christmas game, the atmosphere, they'll be up for it. And somehow City are not at it mentally. But if the City are at this mentally, then they should break them down, because they are looking strong and they're not conceding the goals that they were conceding last season and even in the Club World Cup.
Okay, let's move on to Liverpool against Wolves, because that is another huge fixture for Liverpool. It's going to be a real test for them. Do you think they can possibly make it 3 wins in a row against what is fast becoming one of the resurgent stories of the season in Wolverhampton Wanderers?
Now you're being really piffy, aren't you?
I am being a little bit facetious. I mean, Wolverhampton Wanderers, they are absolute guff, aren't they? And Matt Doherty is absolutely furious about it. Comes out after the game at the weekend against Brentford and lays into everybody. And I can understand why. You know, I'm still, like you, we've talked about this a lot, I'm still laying the blame fairly and squarely at those in charge of the football club for allowing them to get into this position. This has been coming for a very, very long time. And it's only because the coaches, Gary O'Neill, who didn't get enough credit as far as I'm concerned. Yes, it went wrong at the end, but he didn't get enough credit for keeping them up the first time around. Pereira came in and kept them up the second time around. He did a very good job to do that as well. This is not a very good playing squad. It is not a Premier League playing squad. And the idea that they've got to go to Liverpool on what is the Boxing Day fixture on this weekend means that, if you're on a slot, you're licking your lips, aren't you, Crook?
Yeah, so you look at what Wolves did at Arsenal, and they are capable of defending well and raising their game. And I think that's why Matt Doherty got so frustrated, because obviously they produced that kind of performance at Arsenal and then stunk the place out at home to Brentford in a game that gave them an opportunity on paper to get that first win of the season. But it will be a Premier League record, won't it, this weekend? The first team to go 18 games into a season without a single victory. They've already matched Sheffield United's previous best of 17 with that defeat against Brentford. And I don't see where the next win is coming from. The biggest cheer of the season is that Jeff Shee, very unpopular chairman, has now resigned, but not before leaving behind a complete car crash. They're going to sell players in January. There's talk of Jurgen Strand-Larsen potentially off to West Ham. Not sure.
That sounds like exactly what West Ham need. Another striker that doesn't score goals. Brilliant. What a great bit of recruitment that will be.
But he's a disgrace, by the way, because this is someone who did score a lot of goals last season, to the extent that Newcastle whacked in a £65 million offer, which is still madness from Wolves, that he was the one player they decided not to sell. He's not tried a leg for me this season. And that penalty against Brentford, the meagre attempt at getting them on the score sheet, sums it up. He's checked out, and he's not the only one. And I think you'll find that maybe he is one of the players that Matt Doherty was directing those comments at.
Well, it's interesting that you say he scored a lot of goals last season. When you say he scored a lot of goals, I mean, he did at the back end of the season, but the first half of the season and the middle of it, there weren't very many. He just came to maybe a little bit of a purple patch towards the end, and that's, I think, is ultimately what drew the attention of Newcastle
They were
United.
desperate as well. They were desperate at that stage, Newcastle.
They were desperate at that stage, possibly, yes. But at the same time, I will say, if you know anything about Jurgen Strand Larsen, right, his character is not like how you're describing. This is a bloke who, when he was a kid, used to got his dad to do an arrangement with the caretaker at the school so he could go in every morning before school opened and do extra training sessions to try and elevate his level so that he could be a top professional footballer. And he's had to fight against the odds all the way through. And he's been one that has always done that. So the fact that he is not doing that now is a break from the norm in terms of his character. So yeah, I do find that strange. I do find the whole culture around the club strange. And we've talked about Daniel Levy and how Tottenham Hotspur won't change overnight because Daniel Levy's moved on. It's the same at Wolves. Jeff Shee is just a figurehead for the greater ownership model, which is Fosun. And the fact is that they own the club. The guy that owns the club lives in China, apparently gets up and watches them, even if they're on at 3 a.m. in the morning, said Jeff Shee in a recent interview. Also, Jeff Shee did say it doesn't matter what division we're in, which was a bit weird. Good job he feels like that because they're going to be in a different one next year. But until you sort that out, until you sort out the overall ownership issue, nothing's going to change with this football club, Scott.
We've been saying this for years, really, and they've had good managers. You know, we can trying to avoid the circling the drain, but that's exactly what they've been doing. And look, I think they've got talented players. I've seen him enough this season to say they've got talented players. But again, I talk about the mentality of being a Premier League player. This is the elite of the elite. This is the best in the world. And of course, you know, the Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, PSG, they've got the best players in the world as well. But in terms of the ferocity and the physicality and then the mental strength that you need to become a Premier League player, and when you're not winning a game week in, week out, that penalty can look like he's checked out, but he's probably just absolutely gone in terms of confidence. I'm slightly uncomfortable with what Matt Doherty said. And he's been a good pro, he's been a good player. But to really go out and say and be as harsh as everyone knows that. Everyone knows they're potentially the worst team ever in the history of the Premier League. To call I hope that he said exactly the same in the dressing room and look the people in the eye who he said it to. Otherwise, he's just virtue signaling for the fans. And I think he's someone who has had a very, very good career. I just don't think he needed to come out and say that as one of the senior pros.
West Ham against Fulham, interesting game at the bottom of the table. An interesting game for West Ham, because if they were to lose this, I mean, it would basically take Fulham away from them and compound the misery that West Ham are already feeling. But actually, it's quite an opportunity for West Ham, with Nottingham Forest playing Manchester City, for them to put points on the board and close the gap, Crook.
Yeah, and Fulham have got a few out, haven't they, due to AFCON. I think they got one or two injuries and suspensions as well. So if you're going to play Fulham, now is as good a time as any. But I'd be more comfortable backing West Ham if this game were at Craven Cottage, because the atmosphere inside London Stadium is going to be tense. It will turn toxic if things start to go against the home team. We've seen that on numerous occasions, not just this season, but in previous campaigns. But you know what? I was listening, driving back from Villa at the weekend to a caller on White and Jordan on Monday morning, a West Ham fan. And he was saying, look, these players, they have been losers for the past 18 months now. They are used to coming off the pitch, having been beaten at home. And it's very hard without a complete overhaul of the squad to change that mentality. And I think he's dead right. I just wonder if there's enough jeopardy now in terms of losing a game, because even if you do, you know your place is pretty much safe, because there's not really a lot that Nuno can do to change it around, particularly with his own absentees. He's lost both his fullbacks, and to AFCON.
Yeah, and also the other thing is, I don't ever get this. If you're a club that wants to avoid relegation, which West Ham really are, don't sign players who have just been relegated. Goalkeeper, you know, for example, is a prime example. If you sign players that have just been relegated, they're used to it. They know what it's like to lose. I always think that's a bad sign, because you're in a dressing room where people have been used to losing. And if you're adding more losers, I'm not being pithy there. I'm not saying they're losers. You know what I mean? People that have been losing regularly. If you add more of those characters into a dressing room, that doesn't help you. You know, you need people that are going to drive you forwards, not pull you backwards. And West Ham have been pulling themselves backwards for far too long now. And that's why I was a little bit sort of struck by the possibility of Jurgen Strand Larsen going there, because again, it's another player who has become used to not delivering, used to losing, going into that dressing room, Scott. I just don't see how that helps them.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Look, clearly he has had a good attitude. I'm not saying he hasn't got that now, but the penalty sums up where he is right now. And so therefore he's going to be going from one, I don't want to use the word toxic, but one really negative atmosphere to another.
Yeah.
And you need someone who's going to come in and going to be a real sort of, bright, positive energy. And that's something that he's not at the moment. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was at West Ham, and Glenn Roeder, who was an amazing man and a really good coach, and there was 2 or 3 of us he kept on dropping in the season that we went down. So I went in to see him, and I didn't do it very often because I didn't want to make myself, trust me, a nightmare. I just genuinely thought, just work hard and at the training pitch and hopefully get picked. Went in to see him. I said, why am I being dropped? He said, well, we've got someone who can come in and do a job as good as you. Okay, well, but why aren't you dropping others who are playing just as bad, if not worse? He said, I haven't got people who can come in and do a similar job. I said, but if they've got it in their mind, even if it's subconsciously rather than consciously, that they're going to be playing week in, week out, whatever happens, then you're going to be getting the same type of performances. And unfortunately, we ended up going down. So the next 4 games for West Ham are absolutely crucial. Fulham at home, Brighton at home, Wolves away, Nottingham Forest at home. Massive.
Absolutely huge for them. And of course, a lot of those fixtures will be live on talkSPORT, especially that midweek round of games that are coming up very shortly. Also on the 30th, we have all of the games live on talkSPORT and the talkSPORT app. And then we have another midweek round of games in the first week of January, which is absolutely crucial. Those Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, which culminates actually with Arsenal against Liverpool. Fulham have got some big fixtures too over the course of the next few weeks. It's important that they put points on the board, because despite the fact that we've said we think they've got too much quality to go down, they do have, after their game against Nottingham Forest on Monday night, the game against West Ham, the game against Crystal Palace away from home, both those 2 away from home. They're huge, huge matches. And then they've got Liverpool and Chelsea that are going to visit them. And those 2 fixtures in particular, not fixtures which historically they pick up points in, and they finish that sequence of matches with a trip to Ellen Road. And the way that Leeds are playing right now, you wouldn't want to be going there. Harry Wilson having the season of his life. He's playing particularly well at the moment. And there's a lot of talk about new contracts being handed out at Craven Cottage. And a lot of the supporters are desperate to invest in Marco Silva and invest in some of those players that are coming towards the end of their contracts, because they don't want to be light again. They are quite light in terms of the number of players that they're carrying on the squad. One more game to look at this weekend. It's a London derby between Spurs and Palace. Crystal Palace against Tottenham. And the good news here is, Crook, that this is at Selhurst Park for Thomas Frank. He is going to have to navigate it without Xavi Simons and Christian Romero, though.
Yeah, and Palace will be a wounded animal after what happened at Ellen Road. I think we all felt Leeds could get a result in that game just before Christmas, but none of us expected it to be quite as big a victory, because that's just not the Crystal Palace way. And you do wonder if their exertions are starting to catch up with them now in terms of European football, League Cup quarterfinals, and relying on quite a small group of players. I think certainly Oliver Glasner is one of the managers who will be demanding reinforcements in this upcoming window. It'll be interesting to see how Steve Parish reacts to that. But it's still a tough game for Spurs with those absentees, away from home at Selhurst Park, a London derby, as you say. I think it'd take a brave man to back Tottenham to get a result in this one.
Winnable run of games for Spurs to kickstart the new year. Bournemouth, Brentford, West Ham, Sunderland, Burnley following this. And actually, although Crook says you'd be brave if you back Tottenham in this fixture, if Thomas Frank wants to have a success at Tottenham Hotspur, these are the fixtures they need to start putting points on the board from.
Yes, they do. And I think this would be a good time to play Palace. I know they made 11 changes in the Europa Conference League, but, they haven't got the squad to deal with the December that they've had to deal with. So I think if Spurs are going to win in a particular game, I think there were a lot of positives to take out of the Liverpool game. They did go down to 10 men early. They did come back into the game. They did show character, idiotic sending off from Romero. Don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing he's suspended, to be honest with you. But the fact is, your club captain, almost shows where Spurs are, really. So this is a game, I don't know about Crookie, but I wouldn't put any money on this because I wouldn't be able to call it at all.
Boxing Day fixture live on talkSPORT is Manchester United against Newcastle United. Saturday, December the 27th, we got Nottingham Forest against Manchester City. And then we will take you around the grounds with Dean Ashton and Troy Deeney and, of course, Adrian Durham. Sunday, the 28th of December, we'll be bringing you Game Day live. I'll be hosting that show, Sunderland Leeds and Crystal Palace against Tottenham, the big feature on that day. Merry Christmas, Crookmeister. Merry Christmas, Scotty. And by the way, thank you both for being patient with me today because, I've been a little bit under the weather, a bit croaky. So thank you very much for looking after me. I appreciate it.
Merry Christmas and Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad to all of our listeners.
Oh, we did a little rendition of that, didn't we? The talkSPORT Christmas party. I think there's video evidence, Scott, isn't there, of us in Little Italy. We got dobbed in, by the way, by Alan Pardew.
Oh, yeah. Alan Pardew went on air on Sunday and he wasn't at the talkSPORT Christmas party, but he walked in and he actually said, my spies tell me that Crookie has been out in Little Italy till 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday night. And I was like, wow, okay. He goes, yeah, I know the guy who knows the guy who told me about this thing where he couldn't get out of a door, apparently. I was like, okay, interesting. I think that's deserving of investigation. In fact, I don't know if we can send that video of you singing Feliz Navidad to our producer, Joe, and he could add it to the end of this podcast. We could actually play out the podcast with you two singing Feliz Navidad.
Let's do it. Absolutely do it.
I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom